시작하죠. 네, 한국말로 먼저 말씀을 드리겠는데 이게 아마 다음 세션이 있고 이러기 때문에 시간을 굉장히 잘 지켜줘야 되는 모양이에요. 그러니까 지금 시작해가지고 하겠습니다.
크리스탈 홀씨 세션 시작했습니다.
Okay, distinguished participants and honorable supporters of ODA, 안녕하세요. For those unfamiliar with Korean greeting, hello. My name is, as you may know, Dae-Woo, and I'm a senior research fellow at the Sejong Institute with a specific research interest is actually the Korea-US relationship and international security. So I'm honored to preside over this session, but frankly, to be truthful, the topic is somewhat unfamiliar to me. So I have only recently obtained a keen interest in ODA, more specifically my research in public diplomacy paved the way for a better understanding of ODA. Yesterday, the Director Park from South Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and Professor Wang from China Agricultural University presented on each country's ODA policy. So we had a memorable discussion based on the content of the presentation. Today, we will delve further into the matter of discussion, discussing Japan's ODA policy, and discuss the means to enhance the trilateral cooperation of ODA policies among three countries. Today, Japan's ODA policy will be presented by Director Dae-Woo, who is responsible for the climate change division of Japan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So, following the presentation, Professor Sejong from Korea University and Dr. Sejong from Sejong Institute will give their thoughts on in the discussion. So, as always, we are limited for time within a total 80 minutes allotted to this session. So 25 minutes will be spent on the presentation, and I hope the discussants will limit themselves to a total of 10 minutes each. Okay? 10 minutes each. And remaining 30 minutes will detail a general discussion where we will collectively debate trilateral cooperation measures. And also, participants in the floor may prepare a short comment on trilateral cooperation, which they may present toward the end of this session. Okay? Okay. Director Tama, please begin your presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee, and distinguished guests. It's my great honor to be here in this such good occasion to talk about Japan's ODA policies for climate change. My current portfolio is on the climate change negotiations, but in the last couple of years, I was involved in the ODA from different types of perspectives. So I would like to touch upon, starting from my personal experiences, how Japan's ODA was implemented and also how that was related to the various foreign policy goals. And then I move on to discuss on how the ODA could play a role in tackling the global issues, which is climate change. Before getting on to the handout, if you look at the pie charts, which is on the screen, this shows you how important our region is, and particularly how the Japan, Korea, and China is important. This is a kind of pie chart showing the share of greenhouse gas emissions out of the world emissions, according to the IEA latest report. And this is the data of 2009, the CO2 emissions from the energy combustions. And this is the latest available data. And that shows you that out of more than 60% of emissions comes from the member states of the East Asia Summit. And if you look at that closely, 3 countries, China, Japan, and Korea, half of the East Asia Summit members. And then in total, that 30% of emissions comes from China, Japan, and Korea. I will come back to that later on how East Asian countries could work together to tackle the climate change, and in particular how the 3 countries, Japan, China, Korea, could work together for that. If I may get on to touch upon the handout in front of you. The first page shows you how I myself was involved in various issues, and how Japan's ODA made a role in tackling various challenges. This is a kind of rough sketches of the 4 pillars. And first pillar is the ODA is a financial assistance, naturally, so that could play a role to tackle the financial stability, to ensure the financial stability. Many interesting discussions took place yesterday regarding the Asian financial crisis, and I was in charge of the yen loan bilateral ODA in late 1990s. That was when the many Asian countries were hit by the financial crisis. And how to support Asian countries was one of the priority areas. Now, before getting on to the small footnote, if I may, there was some sort of interesting discussion on the whether the money or financial assistance is ODA or non-ODA. I would focus on the ODA, but not limited to ODA, because the financial assistance has no limit. It should be seamless, and various types of financial sources should be mobilized in a coherent manner. Sometimes a grant assistance play an important role for some countries, and sometimes soft loans, concession loans, or in our case, yen loans, should play a role. And then for more developed countries, higher level of the developing countries, more commercialized, but still public loans such as Exim Bank loans could be important. And then after that, private money could be a bigger role. So the important thing is that how to mobilize different sources of finance is important. And then late 1990s, that was the Asia, which was the center of our interest. And in late 2000, after Lehman shock in 2008, it was the problem took place outside Asia. But how to get Asia not heavily affected by the global crisis, that's our concern. So from 2008 up to around 2010, we have made a couple of packages. It's not so large scale as compared to what we did in 1990s, but through various means. Like, for example, in the case of Indonesia, for example, in the late 90s, we did extend a huge amount of yen loans, soft loans, and Exim Bank loans to Indonesia in the post-Suharto difficult political transition. But in 2008 or 2009, we did take more sort of sophisticated approach, like supporting Indonesia, issuing their own yen-denominated bonds by offering guarantees to the samurai bond. Samurai bond means the yen-denominated bonds issued by non-Japanese governments. The second pillar is more sort of related to the, closely related to the foreign policies, particularly alliance management between Japan and the United States. And maybe this is quite similar to what Korea did with the US. I was assigned in the US in early 2000, the year 2000, and post 9/11. War on terrorism in Afghanistan, then in Iraq. And then, although Japan is not directly involved in the combat operations, but how to support post-conflict reconstruction in Iraq or Afghanistan, and in related to Afghanistan, how to support Pakistan was the important agenda. And ODA did play an important role from the early stage of conflict, just after conflict, where the humanitarian support is more important. Then, over the course of the time, nation building or more sort of heavy reconstruction efforts is more important. In the case of Iraq, initially, just after the combat operations, humanitarian assistance in collaboration with the UN or multinational agency was a top priority for us. And then after that, various types of assistance we supported by ODA grant or debt relief or yen loans, and then Exim-backed loans. Iraq is essentially oil-rich country, so it is not appropriate to continue grant assistance for good because it has good revenues, potential revenues to pay for the by themselves. Afghanistan is a bit different case. Afghanistan has much more difficult situation and more of the humanitarian needs, and so more grant assistance and technical assistance was made. The challenge is that the security, how to support, how to reconstruct the security forces, domestic security forces is important things. And the former president of JICA, Madam Ogata, she was very much committed to Afghanistan, and not long before when she was the head of the UNHCR. So Afghanistan is also a priority for Japan's ODA. And after the new administration came in the US, Obama administration has revisited the US strategy for Afghanistan and try to adopt a new approach, try to integrate the Pakistan in their own Afghan strategy, and then nominated the special envoy for looking after the Afghanistan-Pakistan by nominating the late former diplomat Richard Holbrooke. We are very much closely working together with his team. And 3 years ago, we hosted a donors conference for Pakistan to support Pakistan in seriously tackling terrorism. And that would be a very important part of the Afghan strategy. The third pillar is the global development agenda. And that was when I was involved in the MDG stuffs and TCAT and G8 process. In 2007, 2008. That was when the MDG goals was still halfway through. MDG goals, as was explained by Madam Park yesterday, it's a kind of a global goal set by UN. And it is supposed to achieve certain numerical targets in various sectors such as health, education, and poverty in general by 2015. So when we hosted the TCAT conference focusing on Africa and the GA summit in Hokkaido Toyako, that was the kind of the middle toward reaching the MDG. And it was lots of discussion then that we are very far behind achieving various those goals. So how to accelerate our efforts to support countries like Africa or South Asia in achieving their own health or education challenges. And in that process, we have collaborated among not just with the G8 partners, but also with the other emerging donors, including an emerging one, as well as other non-state stakeholders, such as the private foundations, such as Bill Gates Foundation or Ford Foundation, or NGOs. They have a unique expertise and resources that governments don't have. So it really makes sense for us to work closely with those various types of stakeholders. And then lastly, but not least, the global environment agenda. That is what I am currently involved since COP15 in Copenhagen, climate change. This is very much related to the other pillars like development, of course, and also sometimes climate change, the impact of climate change could have implications for security, for example. So I would get on to further discuss on this climate change issue. This is a brief history of Japan's ODA in climate change. The purpose of the ODA in the context of climate change is twofold. One is to help advance climate change negotiations in UNFCCC, and sometimes the negotiations there tends to be very confrontational between developed countries and developing countries. But I think that this is a global concern that developed countries and developing countries should work together. And in order to catalyze that collaboration, ODA could play a very, very important role. Second purpose is because of the nature of the challenges posed by climate change, a huge amount of resources should be mobilized, and ODA could be an integral, important part of that, supporting developing countries in both mitigation and adaptation. Now, maybe some of you may not be quite familiar with the jargon of this mitigation adaptation. Mitigation means that to support developing countries enhance more energy efficiency or energy saving, so that they would not just developing countries, but also developed countries too. That countries should emit less greenhouse gas emissions, so that would our activities would mitigate the impacts upon the climate system. The adaptation means that given that there are lots of unfortunate adverse impacts of climate change take place, the countries should be better prepared to tackle the challenges. Sometimes it's a disaster, natural disaster, sometimes such as the drought, floods, or maybe some further spread of the epidemics caused by the change of the climate pattern. Various types of challenges could take place. So to support the developing countries to be better equipped to deal with that negative impact, that means adaptation. And if you look at this chart, we have developed our own ODA policies in line with the COP negotiations. When we hosted the COP3 in 1997 and adopted the Kyoto Protocol, we launched what we call the Kyoto Initiative. It's a kind of development assistance package composed of more human resource development, more deployment of the concessional loans, and technological assistance. And then, sorry for this misprints. Bali Action Plan was taken in COP13, 2007, when the countries agreed to work towards establishing a more comprehensive framework that is not fully covered by the existing Kyoto Protocol. We launched what we call Coolers Partnership. That was during the Fukuda cabinet of the LDP dominated government. It is a package of the, again, development assistance. This 10 billion pledge is not limited to ODA, but rather includes, as I said before, various types of financial resources, including the Exim Bank loans. And then that pledge was upgraded in 2 years later when the DPJ came in, Development Party of Japan came in, and Mr. Hatoyama. He made an important step in both Japan's emission reduction targets, upgrading the former target set by the LDP, but also he made an important contribution in upgrading the existing pledge. So Coolers partnership was upgraded, and then it was renamed in Hatoyama Initiative, 15 billion pledge for 3 years. And that we are now currently implementing. This year is the final year of the Hatoyama Initiative. This is intended to support the UN negotiations in Copenhagen. Unfortunately, Copenhagen, the negotiation didn't conclude, and it was kind of produced a half-baked output. Still working on the negotiations. And last year in COP17, we have somehow get back on track and to set up a new platform called the Dae-Woo platform and we agreed to work on the more sort of a comprehensive framework by 2015 and to be implemented from 2020. That is a kind of a timeline that we agreed in COP17. We have still lots of ups and downs ahead of us, and lots of obstacles and challenges to be overcome. So in order to support the process of negotiation, we launched a vision last year. Although the vision has yet be fully materialized, and this year is the final year of our existing commitment, we need to work on the new commitment by the end of this year. The vision that we launched is Japan's vision and actions towards low carbon goals and climate resilient world. I will not get into the details of each of the pillars, but very briefly, it's 3 pillars: technology, market, finance. Those are the very important elements of this of our ODA to tackle the climate change. Developed countries, of course, also emerging ones, work together to further promote technological innovation. That is a key to deal with the climate change in the longer term perspective. Secondly, disseminating existing low carbon technologies also important. Probably this is the most relevant in the context of East Asian or trilateral cooperation. If you look at this here, East Asia is already a quite diverse area, so we have to approach in a various manner. Last year, for example, when we hosted the Japan, China, ROK, Korea Trilateral Summit in Japan, just 2 months after the earthquake, we come up with the separate documents, outcome documents, focusing on how the 3 countries could work together for energy saving and promoting renewable energy. That is very important for all of us. Also, Mekong countries, part of the East Asia, but it's quite different situation. We have an annual Japan-Mekong summit. The latest one was in April this year. We have a different approach with those countries. Indonesia, now the anchor country of the ASEAN countries, we have a very good cooperative working relationship with Indonesia too. And 3GI, Global Green Growth Institute, that was launched by Korean government, a very unique approach, and with that fully supported by us. And I just had a very good breakfast discussion with Dr. Han-Soo today, and we are always inspired by Dr. Han-Soo and his team on Global Green Growth Institute. And this, as part of our because partly we are inspired by those Korean initiatives, we launched our own sort of regional version called East Asia Low Carbon Growth Partnership. So low carbon growth cooperation could be made at various levels. Sometimes it could be a global dimension, and sometimes East Asia wide, like using East Asia Summit as a possible framework. That's our idea. Of course, trilateral, Japan, Korea, China, or Japan. There are various ways for promoting low carbon growth. I think low carbon growth is probably a keyword, or low carbon growth or green growth. This is a very, again, interesting sort of discussion taking place in the UN arena. Later this month, there will be a Rio Plus 20 summit. Some countries have concerns about the green growth, the word of green growth, because it could imply putting a constraints on the economic growth. So they prefer inclusive green growth rather than just the green growth. But the point is that I think is very simple. All countries, developed countries and developing countries, need to grow, satisfying basic human needs and so on. And this, I think that could have a very big implications for future energy demand. And of course, that means an implication for CO2. If you look at particularly the population figures, 40 years ago, when the report of the carbon law released in 1972, the world population is roughly 4 billion. Now our population is 7 billion, 3 billion more in the last 40 years. In the next 40 years, by the mid-century, the estimate, the UN estimate will be 9 billion. So 2 billion more, and 1 billion in Africa, and 1 billion more in Asia. And they need to grow. And so population growth is almost unavoidable, inevitable. And constraining the economic growth, or setting a limit on the GDP per capita is not option. So how we could achieve emission reductions? IPCC says that we should reduce our global emissions by half by mid-century. Given how can I achieve that? Given that the population will grow and we need to grow economically. The key is to reduce energy use per unit of GDP, or reduce the CO2 emissions per unit of energy. So either energy saving or expanding renewables or clean energy. Maybe the tricky thing is that how we could treat nuclear. That's a big debate in Japan right now. So this is energy. How to have a best energy mix is a very big debate in Japan. But I think energy mix is the our own global challenge for all of us. So low carbon growth or green growth, however you call it, is a very important agenda for Japan, Korea, and China. And I touched upon the outset at the pie charts at the beginning. For example, that was the data, as I said, at 2009. And 2009, at that time, Japan was still the second largest economy. So our economy was bigger than China then at that time. But still, at that time already, China has emitted 6 times CO2 as we did. This means this could offer challenges, but also opportunities. That means that if China, for example, have a same sort of a set of technologies and so on, then that CO2 emissions could be reduced by more than could become a 1/6, for example. So that could achieve a lot. So I think that East Asia countries, particularly 3 countries, Japan, China, Korea, could work together to enhance more energy efficiency and promote energy renewables. That could be the only probably option to achieve both development goals as well as environment goals. That's kind of key. I didn't have time to touch upon East Asia Low Carbon Growth Partnership and so on, but this is the kind of idea behind this initiative. And we are quite much open to how to follow up on the East Asia Global Growth Partnership, and we very much would like to work with our counterparts of Korean government and institutions and Chinese government institutions. Of course, Global Green Growth Institute, which has a global role, and we have a very good collaboration with 3GI as well. And we are very much open-minded to how we could promote regional cooperation and global cooperation among three countries. Maybe I should stop here to save time. Time efficiency is also quite important. This is a kind of just records of the, what we did in globally or in Asia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear Carlo. Yeah, exact time. So we should save time. Professor, give us your thoughts in this discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman Lee. This is Sejong from Korea University. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here. I hope I was here yesterday, but I was in another session, so I was not here. I don't know what kind of discussions went on. I'm not an expert on climate change, nor on Japan, so I cannot give a detailed comments on Mr. Kano's presentation. But I'd like to take this opportunity to share some of my general thoughts about ODAs in Northeast Asia. A couple of years ago, I wrote an article. The question of that article was why nations provide ODAs. It's a very fundamental question, but I was curious. The advanced countries using taxpayers' money, and they continue to increase the ODAs in recent years. So why? That's all my fundamental question. And my answer was there are three. I cannot explain all my papers, but there are three pressures. The first is pressure of national interest. Since we are using the taxpayers' money, we have to be concerned with the national interest. And when it comes with the national interest, the nations are willing to provide ODAs. And second one is institutional pressure. We have the United Nations and OECD. For example, Korea joined OECD DAC 2 years ago, and there was a condition that Korea has to increase the number of, the ODA number. So that's the pressure on Korea, and since then it's keep increasing. And thirdly, the most important is pressure from civil society, particularly global civil society. There is a fundamental change of global system, and moving from modern Westphalian type of nation-state system to postmodern system. There is an emergence of global civil society, and they have new ideas, new ideas about global co-prosperity and global wealth. We need to help poor countries. So that's the pressure. So in my research, there is a kind of evidence that the ODAs has been more effective when it was implemented by the pressure of civil society. But if you look at what's happening in East Asia, in China, Korea, including Japan, it seems to me there are not many pressure from civil society. Their ODA activities are mostly focused on the national interest. They're most concerned when they have to provide ODAs. First question, government or civil society or institutions they ask is, what is benefit to Korea residential to Japan residential to China. So it's fundamentally, if we believe in the fundamental change of global system and needs of pressure of civil society, I think we collaboratively we need to pay more attention to increasing awareness of importance of ODA and education, etc. That's one of my thoughts, general thought. In that regard, I'd like to ask the Japanese colleague that because as he made a presentation, and also Japan has provided a lot of ODAs, but Japan is not considered as it's considered a very selfish player in global society. They are concerned with national interests. I just wonder why. I just want to hear from Japanese perspective. I heard that there are recent trend that Japan has been decreasing the bit of ODA, but past years, they have increased the great deal of ODAs. But still, they don't have such a reputation. So I'm just curious about that. And next one is I'd like to touch upon a little bit about the relationship between ODA and human rights considerations. Because I've been thinking about human rights for many years, I do believe human rights is an important pillar consideration when we pursue the ODA policies. But I don't see that aspect in Korean case. And I looked into the Japanese principles of ODA, and there is a word of the human rights in the principles. But if you see carefully Japanese implementation of ODA, there is not much concern about human rights. I understand that because when we touch upon human rights, recipients are, most recipients are authoritarian regime, and they hesitant to talk about human rights. But we have to understand that there are many kinds of human rights. When we say human rights, we only talk about civil and political rights. So actually, yesterday I had a session, the leadership role on the human rights and democracy of Korea. And I also talk about this, the human rights is more fundamental, should be more fundamental than democracy, because when we say democracy is one of the political systems, and we deal with civil and political rights. But economic, social, and cultural rights are equally important to the civil and political rights. So when we expand the concept of human rights, when we comprehend fully human rights, I think there is a room for human rights to be considered in the implementation of ODAs. I'll give you an example. If we look at the Korean experience, Korea is considered as Asian leader, because it was successful both in economic development and democratization. And a lot of countries are trying to learn from Korean experience. And I'm very puzzled in many cases, because Korean economic development was accompanied by a lot of human rights violations and undemocratic procedures. And what can they learn? When they develop, they have to learn the authoritarianism. That's my always question. And when they talk about Saemaul-Undong, for example, they try to export Saemaul-Undong to developing countries. So we know that Saemaul-Undong was one of the political propagandas, and how can we export them? But if you look more carefully, if you look from the perspective of economic, social, cultural rights, in Korean authoritarianism, I think through the Saemaul-Undong or other social programs, there was a respect for social, economic, human rights. There's education system, there's a health system, there's efforts to establish the village, health is the village. That's the foundation that Korea was able to be be democratized in later years. So that's something we have to consider, in my opinion, when we do ODA activities. Human rights should be considered as an important point. I have a lot more to say, but I'll stop there. And then a last point I'd like to make is importance of so-called network governance. I looked at the Director General Park's presentation yesterday. I didn't hear, but I looked at the materials, PPT materials, and also today Mr. Kano's presentation. All of them are talk about the governance. Governance meaning that there are a lot of diverse actors, not only government, but also NGOs and UN and private sectors. We have to collaborate with each other. That's extremely important. Again, in the era of 21st century, when we are facing the postmodern characters, not only government but other actors need to be major actors in society. But government should have a leadership because it's again ODA is using taxpayers' money and government is the initiator and government. But government role is to be coordinating the role, and also always they have to concern with the bottom-up process of rulemaking and implementation, etc. So I call it bottom-up network multilateralism. So the role of government is not government, particularly in the East Asian context. Japanese government, Chinese government, Korean government, all the governments think that always. We have to do things. Okay? We are responsible for this. I think they have to change their mindset. It's collaboratively should be done. Even if they are talking about this, importance of this. I talked to the General Pekjia yesterday. She also understands that, but when they do have real activities, they are concerned that we have to do it, and government has to do it. Government is responsible. So I think that's the important things we have to keep in mind.
Thank you, Professor. Yeah, okay. Dr. Jung?
Thank you for Dr. Kano's presentation. I was impressed by Japanese government and concern and efforts to tackle the climate change. And actually, climate change is very important. Because it's obviously a major factor which can influence the paradigm of human civilization. Also, Northeast Asian countries, Japan, Korea, and China. The three countries are all, trying to do the best to develop so-called, the green growth. The Director Kano expressed the low carbon growth, but in Korea, the green growth is more familiar. Anyhow, because of time constraint, I will ask you two things to Director Kano. One is we are in the process of the implementing and completing the Kyoto protocol, but unfortunately the progress is not so satisfiable because of at Copenhagen COP15. The prospect is pretty much rosy, but in Copenhagen, the Cancun and Durban, COP the 16 and 17. The collision between the large emerging economies like China and India, also the already established economies in the US and Western Europe and Japan, they begged to make some agreements. So as a field worker, what is the prospect for the climate change, to prevent the climate change in the future. And another question is the Korea is now many of the NGOs, also the government ministries, they are interested in engaging in some ODA activities. So regarding the Japanese ODA governance, the other, the industries, the engagement in ODA activities, one other, then if they, trying to, the implement their own, version of, ODAs, how they, coordinate, those kind of, the ODA activities, so I want to hear about, the kind of, the opinion about that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think the total 5 questions to you. I think I'll give you about 10 minutes. Okay, response. Okay.
So thank you very much, Dr. Chang, Dr. So, and Dr. Chun. And I'm not sure I fully understood all of your questions, but I will try to answer as much as I can. With regard to Dr. So's questions on the reputation, I think you mentioned a couple of things: reputation and human rights and network governance sort of thing. And with regard to reputation, I don't think that Japan is regarded alone. Only Japan is regarded as a kind of a selfish player. I think in that respect, I think all the donor countries, to some extent, selfish. And all the countries have their own national agenda, priorities. I think it is quite natural. Otherwise, it is quite difficult for us to make the case to our own taxpayers. And I didn't mention the amount of ODA in the last 2 decades. Actually, our ODA has peaked in 1997. And that 1997, that was the highest. Our ODA was the highest, and since then, for various reasons, our ODA has steadily decreased by probably by nearly half. And I'm very encouraged to see that the Korean government is now trying to double the ODA. But I think in the course of the time, I think our Korean colleagues will have a challenge of how you make the case to your own taxpayers. Why is it for? And I think somehow we have to explain that that ODA is linked to the national interests. But the point is that the important thing is that how that national interest could coexist with the global interests. That's the key, and that's where the governments and diplomats and policymakers should think about how we could harmonize our own national interests with the global interests. So I think I can pick up a couple of statistics. Japan is not the only service player, and actually our ODA or officials, our various types of assistance is highly regarded in many countries. That's one point. With regard to human rights is actually an important pillar of our ODA policies. It is stated in the ODA charter or actual sort of policy making. The difficulty is that how you actually apply that principles in specific cases. And for example, I mentioned that our support to the Indonesia in the post-Suharto political transition. That process was complicated by not just by the financial crisis, but also by the things that was happening in the East Timor. That was a very difficult time. Some sort of pressures on cutting off all aid to Indonesia because of their problems in East Timor. But it's not kind of a black and white choices. We certainly have to encourage Indonesia to properly deal with the East Timor issues, while at the same time we have to support Indonesia because it's key countries and lots of implications of the regional stability. And so likewise in Myanmar too, or Sri Lanka, always we have to handle human rights issues, but as well as the regional stability or political stability. Unless political stability is ensured, human rights cannot be guaranteed. Always, sometimes countries have different approaches. United States has its own approaches, and Europeans has different approaches, and Asian countries have other approaches. It doesn't mean that some countries do not respect human rights less than the others. And it is how you look at the issues and certainly the kind of common denominator should be made, and there are some sort of red lines and so on that should not be tolerated. But otherwise, I think there are always a difficult choice that we have to make. Network governance issues. I'm not quite fully understand the question, but I think all that I want to emphasize is that things that we have to deal with are so complex, and expertise that the government has is quite limited. So there is no choice but to reach out various players, NGOs, private sectors, or private foundations. Try to engage all different types of stakeholders to that common goals. That's what I myself explored when I was in charge of the MDG issues. I had a lot of dialogue with the various types of NGOs in charge of health or education, and extensive discussion with the foundation like Gates Foundation, and we actually produced a very concrete results of cooperation that somehow ODA was combined with their important complementary law. So we have a kind of a multi-layered sort of approach in tackling the climate change. The last point is that ODA's law.
Other ministries,
Within the government.
yes.
Yes. It's always quite big debate actually in Japan in the last years and in the last couple of decades. For example, not in the government ministries but also implementing agency. I think Mr. Karasawa has now in the JICA, but before that he was at the JBIC, but before that he was I think OECF. So he has his organization has changed its name or in the over time because of the sometimes it's called that grant assistance agency should merge with the soft loans, and that's the current shape of the JICA. But in the past, when we make a JBIC converging OECF soft loan institutions and Exim Bank to make JBIC. At that time, the logic was that any types of loan institutions should be in the single agency. And also at the governmental level, what kind of roles to be played by the Minister of Foreign Affairs or Minister of Finance or in our case, METI, or other ministries who has specific expertise in specific sectors, for example, Minister of Agriculture or Ministry of Transport. And I don't have any sort of perfect answer to that, but the point is that I think some sort of a coordinating law should be made. A couple of years ago, when we during the Abe cabinet and still it's SDP, I was in the Prime Minister's office. There was a discussion, and that the Prime Minister's office should be a control center. And then, under the guidance given by the Prime Minister's office, Minister of Foreign Affairs at the ministerial level should coordinate with other ministries. And then implementing agencies, JICA, should play a role. That's a kind of three-stage structures. But on the other hand, in practice, I think Prime Minister's office is too busy. It has a lot of domestic agenda to tackle. And so I think in practice, foreign ministry, I don't think that our foreign ministry is perfect. But we are making the best effort to try to coordinate various development challenges. And in implementing phase, JICA, I think still it's a relatively new JICA is now has both grant and technical assistance as well as yen loans. I think changing organizational structure takes time to get to the normal ways and to harmonize the different cultures. So I don't have a perfect answer answer to you, but we have always try and error stage and try to minimize the errors to make the best shape.
Thank you. I think the Director Park has something to say or response. Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kano, for your very concise but quite substantive presentation. It is also very much interesting to hear the intervention of the comments from Professor Seo, why countries are doing ODA. That's actually the question we have to answer, and our 40 minutes is doing some work, some exercise to define our ODA philosophy. So I have to invite Professor to engage in our work. Let me follow up first Mr. Professor Seo's comments on national interest and Mr. Kano's response to that. Professor mentioned that many countries are doing ODA mainly from the pressure of national interest and institutional pressure and pressure from civil society. It's very good observation. To me, it seems that all these three demands, pressure, actually can be linked to national interest in long term. To meet institutional pressure, to meet the demand of civil society, actually many countries, they are going to try to meet this pressure because they believe that it will benefit their national interest in the long term. So enlightened national interest, which means national prestige, soft power, international leadership, and building sound global governance to tackle global challenges like terrorism, environmental crisis, food crisis, and so on. So every country is doing ODA for their own national interest. There is no question about that. But the question is the scope, the definition of national interest. For example, Nordic countries, they are providing ODA in a very neutral way, mainly for humanitarian purposes, because they believe that doing it that way will benefit their national interest. It will scale up their global status. And while the United States is providing ODA to meet military agenda, so because they believe that it best serves to U.S. national interest. So it's up to each country how you define your own national interest, the scope and the definition and the priorities. In that sense, yesterday I mentioned that Korea's ODA approach is, we think ODA is not a charity, it's a very wise, smart investment for the shared future for all, and eventually it will serve our national interests. So Korea now reached the stage that we have to define our national interest inconsistent with global interest, which Mr. Nakano also pointed out. Now the task is how to shape national interest inconsistent with international or global interest. It is very much a difficult and sophisticated task, which foreign ministry should further work. Can I go to our next page, I think which is regional, our Predator cooperation on ODA.
But actually, we have only 16 minutes. Okay.
I'll take just 2 minutes because it's very important issue for us. Lastly, Korea, Japan, China, they have all different backgrounds and different experiences, different modality and styles in its development cooperation, but there is a huge potential to work together to create a synergy. That's why last year at the Trilateral Summit between three countries, the leaders they made a declaration, joint declaration, including possible development cooperation, joint development cooperation. And foreign ministers also they raised the discussion and they promised to work together to particularly to make contribution to MDGs, three countries together. Mr. Kano mentioned about the regional cooperation with Mekong countries. Korea also have some projects for those countries and China and Japan too. So as a kind of pilot project, we can see we can make some concerted efforts. For the initial stage, we can exchange our informations and we can try to find some synergies. Then we can, for a second stage, we can actually work together for some joint program for Mekong countries. In addition to have some joint programs, we may work actually together in a global forum. Such as the G20 Development Working Group and the Busan Global Partnership. Three countries are very important key players in G20 Development Working Group and also in Busan Global Partnership. We can find some we can make some concerted efforts to promote new global architecture based on our comparative and respective advantages and strengths and uniqueness. So that's my comment.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Professor Kim? I gave you homework yesterday, yeah?
I have nothing to say because I'm nobody.
How about Mr. Masayuki? You have something to say? But the comments on the trilateral cooperation, I mean, yesterday you were talking about the confidence building, something like that. So yes. I like heard that kind of thing. Mike?
Yeah, I agreed on basically I agreed on the explanation of the Madam Park. There are huge room for three countries for the cooperation, and at the same time the bilateral consultation process, the field cooperation is also very important, complementary to the three parties, and also the larger framework of the global governance. The bilateral relations that is indispensable to accumulate the trust-building process. Without such process, the constructive discussion within the larger governance is very difficult. So that is complementary process. That is so.
Okay, thank you. Next, Professor. Yeah.
Let's just
within 3 minutes, okay?
Yeah, briefly respond. I'm glad that Director General Baguna, who is in charge of development and cooperation in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, understand the importance of new concept of national interest. And I fully agree with that. The nationalist concept has been changing, and we need to have a new definition. And if you gave us an example of Scandinavian countries, I think that's the model that we have to follow. And in order to have a new definition of national interest, we need to have more pressure from civil society. That's what's done in Scandinavian countries. Japan, Korea, and Northeast Asian countries are a long way to go, actually. So we have to put an effort on doing that. And in regards to the, I'd like to emphasize about the importance of human rights briefly. Mr. Kano answered that he understands the importance of human rights, but the difficulty is how you apply. That's true. It's truly difficult to apply the human rights issues in the implementation of ODA. That's why we need to have a creative strategies of doing it. Because I talk about democracy and human rights. I do not agree with the liberal American idea that democracy is fundamental. I mean, democracy is precondition for economic development. I don't agree with that. There's no case in the world in history. Democracy came first and the economic development. So, but in terms of human rights, as I said in case of Korean example, there's a clear the human rights provisions of particular economic and social rights, education systems, health insurance, social programs, etc. I think that is fundamental for the eventual democratization of Korean society and economic growth. So when we give ODA, the fundamental purpose of giving ODA is for their development, not only economically but also politically. And but when we give them ODAs, there's a lot of human rights violations involved. A lot of transnational companies are going there, and not only political and civil rights, but social and economic rights. So that is not going to help them to develop eventually. So that's why I'm emphasizing the concern of the human rights is extremely important. Even government, recipient governments, disregard that kind of violations, even encourage violations for immediate economic success. That is not right. So when we provide ODAs, we have to be concerned with the human rights. That's my point.
Thank you. Do you have any comment? Yeah. No? No? Okay. That's it.
Okay, so don't spend too much time. Just 2 points. First one is that Japan and Korea, OECD members, so they have accumulated many good experiences and lessons for the management of aid programs. So like monetary and evaluation and some management technical aspects. So this should be learned by China, and sharing experiences in foreign aid in this aspect is the first step for cooperation for the 3 countries. And another point that I like to remind everybody to keep in mind that the long-term strategy or planning for China's foreign aid policy is to promote South-South cooperation, but not North-South relations that many ODA countries are doing. So to what extent we can really cooperate should be discussed under this framework.
Okay, thank you. We have 7 minutes. Okay, Dr. Sejong?
Well, first, I want to answer the direct question. Korea is developed in economy or the developing the economy. The answer is very simple and clear. If we have to pay money, we are developing country. Okay, but in other cases, we are developing a country. Well, just a joke. But whether Korea, wanted or not, other, the international members, they are they think Korea is already developed in the country. So also Korea is ready to take the responsibility, and we're doing our best for that. Okay, and also as the program manager about this the opportunity. As I explained yesterday, we had so far 5th the colloquium, and this is the 6th colloquium, and also it was sort of wrapping up the occasion to finish our 1 year the program, and the objective of this the occasion is to form sort of the ODA community among the China, Japan, and Korea, because we needed to share, the vision. Also, we needed to, the communicate, our ideas or also our experiences. Also, we needed to, as the director, the talk said, that we needed to cooperate, our the ODA activities. And thing is, the international society is the Japan and Korea, Japan and Chinese ODA activities are, underestimated. Okay. Obviously, Japan is one of the largest donor, and they also it helped a lot. Also, China it helped a lot, especially the very poor countries. So, but there's some obviously some bias of coming from some Western ODA communities. But so those East Asian countries should overcome this kind of some the bias. Okay, so that's why So I sincerely propose to Professor Wang and also the Director Kano, also the Mr. Masayuki, to have a sort of this kind of meeting about the Korea, Japan, and also Chinese, the policymakers, also scholars, also the NGO and activities, to have some let's say seminar or the workshop or whatever, to sort of brainstorming our the ideas. Okay? That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. And finally, the Director Kim.
Can I say something? Can I add?
All right, yes,
Mr. Wang,
please. Yeah.
Thank you very much for giving me additional minutes. With respect to the question whether Korea is a developing country or developing country, well, if I am abroad, then everybody think Korea is a wonderful country and remarkable country. So I'm very proud of my country. But once I'm in, I hear a lot of complaint and a lot of self-criticism. And I'd like to say to our domestic audience that we should be more proud of our achievement, and we have to now have mentality as developed countries, which means that we should take more international responsibility. Our ODA GNI ratio is just 0.13, and which was the lowest among OECD members 2 years ago, and happily last year we upgraded just 1 grade, second lowest because of Greek crisis. Greek is the down and we are the second one. And Mr. Kano mentioned that Korea is a developing country under UNFCCC framework. Well, UNFCCC framework, the criteria is different. The criteria is whether you have economic power or not. The criteria is that you have historic responsibility of a nation. So based on that criteria, we don't have much historic responsibility. That's why we belong to developing countries under UNFCCC framework. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, final thought.
Well, thank you very much. I very enjoyed this discussion. Although I don't get into the details of the climate change negotiation, it will take a couple of sleepless nights, and I don't get into the details. But anyway, with regard to the Madam Park's previous comment, points on the need to enhance trilateral cooperation and development assistance, or in larger forums such as G20 or Busan Partnership. I think it's very important thing. And the point that I would like to mention is that this kind of a rule-making on development assistance policy is not something that Asian countries, Japan or Korea or China, take as a kind of a given. But rather, I think all of us should conceptualize our own experiences at home as well as abroad to conceptualize the philosophy or rules, and then make a contribution to the global rule making. I think we have a lot of history of debates with our European colleagues and American colleagues about the methodologies and the philosophies of the economic cooperation. But all those countries make their own arguments based upon their own historical experiences For example, Japan, we make that our way of making economic assistance largely based upon our own experiences in Asia, whereas also our own history of economic development. Whereas the Europeans have their argument is largely based on their own history of assistance in Africa, or US has its own unique experiences. So it's not something that this one is better than the others, but rather I think there are diverse experiences. And I think it could be even more diverse, given that more newly sort of emerging donors are coming in. And so the structure would be more complex. But I don't think it's not necessarily a bad thing. But rather I think what I want to say that because East Asia or trilateral countries have made a bigger share than in the past. This is something that we should be proud of. And what we are supposed to do is to how we could help support other parts of the world which have yet to grow fully by sharing our own experience. Maybe our experience cannot be directly applicable. Maybe there's some modification, but at least I think we should make an effort to conceptualize our own experiences at home and abroad, so that the conceptualized rules could be more widely available. That's the kind of contribution that we can make in various fora, G20 or some others.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I think we should leave this room for the next session. So I really appreciate for coming here and participating in this session. Thank you very much.
자, 이것으로서 1차 6차까지 진행된 ODA 행사였습니다. 공식적인 행사는 이것으로 끝이고요. 오찬이 있고요. 비행 시간들이 다 그렇게 다른 것으로 알고 있습니다. 그래서 오찬 하시고 비행 시간에 맞춰서 출발하시면 되겠고요. 그리고 저희가 지금
너무 과한 친구예요.
오늘 출발하시는 분들 중에 15시 45분 비행기로 출발하시는 분들이 있으십니다. 조한솔 연구원님, 구선명 대리님, 홍승무 기사님, 그다음에 황인정 연구원, 유봉주 박사님. 저희 차가 1시 반에 그 호텔 로비에서 출발할 예정입니다. 그래서 3시 45분 비행기가 예약되신 분들은 아마 저희가 제공할 수 있는 차량을 이용하시면 될 것 같습니다.
세종 콜로키도 하고 학생 참가도 하고. 밖에서 물어줘. 호이카 세종 콜로키엄 학생 참가다. 또 사람 달라고 하니까 내가 알아서라 했더니 거의 욕을 하고 미친 거 다 쓰셔야 돼요. 재밌었어요? 내가 오늘은 괜찮았던 것 같아요. 글자가 먼저 어제보다 아까 맨 마지막에 여자분이 우리가 좀 우리 자신을 되게 자랑스러워 해낸다고 그래야 되지? 너무 막 생각하고 있다. 아까 그 처음에 막 고대 교수님께서 뒤에서 우리는
교수님 원래 약 인권이나 막 이런 거
되게
NGO 활동하시고
그래서
너는 편도 있잖아.
위치가 어떤
5층. 5층에 아까 벌써 일로. 아니, 저기 무장했어.
아이고 아니다.
네.